So here is the second part of the method of the extraction. In the first part, we have seen the three method of the extraction: the infusion, decoction, and the digestion. So in this part, we go for the more two methods of the extraction. So the next two method of the extraction is maceration and the percolation method. What is the learning outcome? You are able to understand the maceration and the percolation method of the extraction after this lecture to be completed, and then whole method of the extraction, five methods you will able to understand. Maceration are of three types. This keeping the sample for the 7 days and can be divided into three types. The first is the simple maceration. The second is the modified maceration. And the third one is multiple maceration. So let's see one by one what are these different kind of the maceration. The first is simple maceration. In this, sample is placed in the menstruum for 7 days. It's the simple method what we have learned previously in the maceration process, keeping your sample for the 7 days with the menstruum. It's the simple maceration, and after putting it we have the filtration. So the next maceration type is modified maceration. What we do in this method, we add our sample with the menstruum, and it goes on dividing into two parts. The first one is we have to divide, in which the first is come with the larger part, that is 4 to 5th part, 4 by 5, and the 1/5 part. So we can divide our solution. One is of a maximum and one is the minimum. Now we place the two parts in the period of 7 days both, and after that when we go for the filtration, then we have the filtration of the maximum part and then we have the minimum part. Then we go for adding both the extract together, and then we perform the analysis. So such kind of the maceration is called modified. So in modified maceration, where you go for adding your sample with the menstruum, it is divided into two parts. The one is maximum and one is minimum, and it is kept for the 7 days as usual in the method. And after the filtration, we go for separation in the filtration of the parts, then we mix together to have the final extract. So the next maceration is the multiple maceration. In this maceration, we can perform a simple maceration process and goes on repeating the process 2 or 3 times, and it can be more than 3. When your sample is too hard enough for the extraction, this process can be used, and it is used to achieve the maximum extraction from the sample. So when we go for the repetition of the simple maceration process 2 or 3 and more than that, it is called the multiple maceration process to achieve the maximum extraction. So after the maceration, we come to the percolation method, which is a continuous downward displacement of your solvent through the bed of the crude drug material or your sample to get the extract. We have to use the continuous downward displacement of your solvent with the bed of your sample. So such kind of method is called percolation. It is a method of short successive maceration or a process of displacement. So we can say a partial concentrated extraction is taken out as a process of displacement in the percolation. Percolation is carried out in a percolator. What is percolator? It is a narrow cone shaped vessel. You are able to see here the percolator, a narrow cone shaped vessel which is open at both the ends. So it can be of conical shape here, the percolator, and it can also be the cylindrical shape. So here you are able to see the cylindrical percolator also. So it is a vessel which is a cone shaped vessel which is open at both the ends, is used to perform the method of the percolation. So a percolator is a narrow cone shaped vessel you have seen, open at the both the ends, which is generally used in this method of the extraction. So it can be mainly of a cone shape or the cylindrical shape which is open at both the ends. So in this the percolation is carried out, and percolation is carried out in the various steps. So what the steps carried out in the percolation? The first step is size reduction. It is an important step in the percolation. The sample to be performed to go for the percolation, which is having the size to be reduced up to a fine powder form. The second step is the imbibition, where we keep our sample moistened with the menstruum and keep it at 4 to 5 hours in a closed container. So the third step involves the packing. We go for using our moistened solution into a percolator, where we go for packed the solution in the percolator. After that, the fourth step is maceration. We add more menstruum in the packed solution and just keep it for 24 hours. And after that, the last step is percolation. We just open the bottom tap to collect our liquid slowly. So this is all the step to be performed here. The size reduction, the sample to be extracted subjected to the suitable size, and the size which is suitable here, that is of usually of fine powder. The next step is imbibition. The powdered sample is moistened with the suitable amount of the menstruum and allowed to stand to 4 to 5 hours in a well closed container. Understood? Then we have a packing. So after the imbibition, the moisture sample is evenly packed into the percolator. We just use the moistened solution, and in a percolator, the cone shape or the cylindrical shape, it is to be packed. Then we have the maceration step. After the packing, the sufficient menstruum is added to saturate the material. We add more menstruum so that the whole solution is go for in the saturated form. Now the percolator is allowed to stand. Yes, in the maceration step, allowed to stand for 24 hours for the complete maceration. So in the percolation, we keep the packed solution up to 24 hours for the maceration. So the last step involved is the percolation. We just open our lower tap of the percolator and the liquid is collected, which is allowed to drip slowly at a controlled rate until your 3/4 volume of the finished product is obtained. So slowly at a controlled rate, the liquid is collected in a flask up to the 3/4 volume of the finished product is obtained, and that is your final extract. And this is how the percolation method of the extraction completes. So it involves all the steps. The first is the size reduction of the sample, then imbibition, then packing, then maceration, and finally the percolation. So let's see what are the advantages of the maceration method. The first is it is useful for the small sample size. If your sample is having the sample size is small, it is useful. It is useful in your sample if the strong swelling properties it possesses, or we can say it possesses the high mucilage property. It is the property due to the presence of the glue-like or gum-like constituents or thick constituents. So for that sample, if possessing such properties, the maceration is useful. It is the energy saving process because heat is given heat is not given at that appropriate amount. So it's an energy saving process. Now, what are the limitations of the process? We cannot say the complete extract obtained from the maceration. Not exhaustively extract is obtained by the maceration. The full complete extract what we want from the sample, it is not a complete extract obtained by the maceration. It is very slow process as we are keeping our sample with the menstruum for 7 days. So it's very slow process. The solvent required in the method is more. That is also a disadvantage or the limitation of the maceration. Now let's see what are the advantages of the percolation method. It requires less time than the maceration. Maceration require very more time because we keep our sample with the menstruum up to 7 days and then the filtration is taken up. So percolation require lesser period of time than the maceration. So it is the advantage. The extraction of thermolabile constituents can be possible. The thermally stable constituents are, if they are heat stable constituents, they can be extracted in the percolation. Now, what are the limitations of the percolation method? It requires more time. The another separation method, soxylation. Soxylation is also one kind of the extraction method, the extraction of the solid using the menstruum when we go for heating it, boiling it. So the soxylation method, from the soxylation extraction method, it requires more time. More solvent is required here also. In the percolation, the solvent requirement is high. In the maceration also, the solvent requirement is high. So that is the limitation. The skilled person is required in the method of the separation of this extraction method. So the skilled person is another limitation of the percolation. Now we see the difference between the maceration and the percolation. We have seen the advantages and the limitation of both the process. Now we can have the difference between these two methods. The maceration is time consuming method because it is very slow process. And we can also say the extraction, what we get, it is not a complete extraction. While in percolation, it requires short period of time, and we can say a more complete extract we can get in the percolation. So the time requirement is very high in maceration, while a short period of time required for percolation. The extraction is not complete in a maceration, but a complete extraction is in percolation. The second difference is not skilled operator required in the maceration. Means no having the using the method. It does not require a skilled person. But in percolation, always a skilled operator required. Now the third difference we can see for a certain substances which are very less soluble in the solvents, it can be used the maceration, and it require prolonged contact with the solvent. Long period of the contact is the prolonged contact. Means we are keeping the sample, the solvent for 7 days. So that is the prolonged contact with the solvent required in the maceration. The special attention should be paid on the particle size of the material throughout the process. Means we know that in percolation the size reduction is one of the step. If it is not at the appropriate size, we have to go for reducing its size so that the percolation should be performed. So the special attention in the percolation is of size, and in the maceration the contact, the prolonged contact with the solvent is required. Suitable method for the less potent and the cheap samples, which we can say which are less costlier samples. So for that we can choose the maceration, while it is suitable for the costlier samples which are having the high risk to be taken up. We cannot go for reuse the substance, or we can use more than 1 or 2 period of time. So for the costlier samples we can use the percolation method. So these are the differences between the maceration and the percolation method of the extraction. So we have learned the various method of the extraction, the infusion, its type, the fresh and the concentrated infusion. Then we have learned the decoction method, the highly concentrated decoction we can go for performing if we want the concentrated extract. Then we have learned the maceration, different types of the maceration. We have the different simple, modified and multiple maceration. After that, percolation, the advantages and disadvantages, and the difference between these method of the extraction. So this is all about the method of the extraction. Thank you and take care.